Great morning, great morning, great morning. 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time here on WDRB Media, the voice of the community. It is time for the It's About You radio show, hosted by me, Maurice McDonald. Each and every Tuesday morning, Eastern Standard Time, I have the pleasure, the privilege, the honor to have this platform. Each week I say I don't take it for granted, and today is no different. I do not take it for granted. 40 years ago, I decided I wanted to go into radio, television, broadcasting, and went to the Carolina School of Broadcasting in North Carolina. At that time, I wasn't ready. I had to go become a law enforcement officer, a professional school counselor, and a college educator. And wouldn't you know it, my creator brought radio back. So it's an honor for me to be here on WDRB Media, the voice of the community. Because it's 8 o'clock in the morning, I know someone is in the shower, someone's having breakfast, someone's in the office. And I hope you understand this show is designed to get into your ears, into your hearts, and hopefully into your legs, causing you to become the very best each and every day that you can possibly be. Because that's what this show is about. You making great choices and make great decisions about your life to overcome obstacles, to put away excuses, and for you to go and realize it is about you, the quality of your mind, the integrity of your soul, and the determination of your future that will shape your life. Quote by the late, great Benjamin Mays, Dr. Benjamin Mays, president of Morehouse College, ladies and gentlemen. And because it's 8 o'clock in the morning, I always start with the morning quote of the day. The morning quote of the day by Robert Kiyosaki, the author of the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And he's also a multi-billionaire and entrepreneur, but he says that sight is what you see with your eyes, what you're able to see with your eyes. But vision is what you see in your mind. There are a lot of people say, I believe it when I see it. Well, what you see and vision have nothing in common. Vision is sometimes is hidden. It's what you see. It's that faith that go beyond. Stop saying, I believe it when I see it. Because your sight can fool you. What you think you see, it's not really there. It's an illusion. But you having the faith, the courage, the vision to see greater things. Because you were created for greatness. Because every single day I give this quote, I always say that you were created for greatness. You were created to be spectacular. You were created to be a change agent. You came in the world a winner. I've said that before. You came in the world a winner. Out of 50,000 sperm cells, you found the egg. So no matter what you do, what you go through, the ups and downs, the pitfalls, every single thing you go through, just know that you are a winner. You may not feel like it, but it's a good thing. Again, don't go by your feelings. You can't see that you're a winner. Stop going by your sight. You see, it's important that you don't know what a day can make. If you being at the right place at the right time with the right person with the right mindset, and you can change your life by making the proper decisions to step out on faith, and you can't see it. So your eyes is not the barometer. It is your wisdom, your vision, the courage to step out on it. Some of you have been wanting to have a business for years. You've been wanting opportunity. And when opportunity comes, you run from it because it's disguised in work overalls. It's disguised as hard work. It's disguised as something you aren't familiar with. It's disguised as something you're very uncomfortable with. So therefore, you sit back and wait because you want the creator to bring the opportunity the way you want it to be. And therefore, you don't move on it. So that is your morning quote of the day, brought to you by MauriceMcDonald.net. Go to MauriceMcDonald.net and learn all about your gut microbiome. Learn all about your amazing gut health, your amazing products that can help you to feel better and take charge and to activate your life each and every day. That's again, MauriceMcDonald.net, MauriceMcDonald.net. Ladies and gentlemen, I told you a couple weeks ago that I was going to have a series. I started off talking about untying the knots in your life. The knots. I told you I was writing down the highway, and I kept seeing a billboard each and every day, and it was a ribbon that was kind of in a knot, the ribbon like you put on a present. And it was a commercial for an attorney's office. And it says, "We untie the knots to getting your life back in order," and their phone number and their website. And every time I'd see that, I thought about the knots. And so I did a series 2 weeks ago. I started a series talking about those knots. And I want to continue today talking about the knots. And so the first thing I want to do, number one, is to talk about how these knots tie into our lives. How they tie into, I'm going to describe some of the different knots that are there, and sometimes the best lessons come from simple things, and I'm going to use the analogy of knots like in a rope or ribbon or string to talk about them in our lives. And the first knot I want to talk about is the overhead knot. It's a type of knot that you use and tie. It's called the overhand knot, not the overhead, the overhand knot. And pretty much it's kind of like similar to dealing with small issues. But here's the life lesson that comes from that knot. Small problems, when ignored, can still trip you up. You see, small problems, when ignored, that's a key word. It may be small when you ignore it, like the little small pain you may have in your chest that you ignore, the little simple cough that you keep ignoring and you don't go to the doctor, and later on you find out that it's really something. So don't dismiss little stressors. Deal with them early. That part is so important. Don't ignore them. You got to deal with them, and deal with them early, because a lot of times waiting on things to manifest, the small problem that seems simple, but it can still trip you up. Stopping the end of the rope from slipping through something. You see, that overhand knot is a simple knot. It's just a rope or loop that you pull through. It's a simple one. And stopping at the end of the rope from slipping, from going through. You got to make sure you tie it right. Well, sometimes the small problems that seem simple can trip us up over time, and we ignore it. We don't deal with it right away. And that part is so important. And so the idea is, walking alone in that journey. Don't quit on yourself just because the knot is tight. The idea, keep pulling it gently. Freedom is on the other side of it sometimes. That little simple knot, the freedom is on the other side, is right there. And that part we need to address. We need to make sure that we address that little simple overhead knot. And sometimes we get stuck in a cycle, stuck there, carrying the pain from the past. That's a knot. And today we're going to talk about, untying that knot. That simple overhand knot is so important to deal with. And also, along with that same overhead knot, this ties in with, with this as well, an emotional knot. An emotional knot that forms when we stuff feelings instead of proceeding with them. The anger, the guilt, the grief, shame. When emotions stay bottled up, they don't go away, they tighten. You start snipping at people, getting real snappy at them, and these are people you love. You shut them down, you shut them out. Untying that knot starts by naming what you feel, giving yourself permission to feel it. Let me say that again. It is important that you understand that untying that knot starts with naming what you feel. You see, a lot of times it's a simple knot, but you don't name it, what you feel, and especially men. Let me speak to the brothers. I know we're forever saying we don't have feelings. What's going on? Nothing. I'm straight. I'm good. And I'm not good. You see, it's important to name what you feel and give yourself permission to feel it. It is okay. What you don't express, you end up carrying. You see, my background is in counseling, and I understand we carry a lot of baggage. You see, a suitcase has a purpose. A shopping bag has a purpose. You know, that a trunk has a purpose to carry things in, things that are heavy for us. A forklift has a purpose to carry the heavy weight, to carry the heavy load. And we're not built to carry that, but we try to carry that. And it's important to know that what you don't express, you end up carrying. And that carrying can lead to a lot of issues with us. Even though, as I said, this was a simple overhand knot, but understand something. The knots in our life don't just disappear. I said in the last show, talking about untying the knots, is that what you don't work on will work on you. What you don't admit doesn't mean it goes away. It's still there. You can be in denial, that big river in Africa, okay? Denial. So, but you got to understand that simple knot, or let's call it the emotional knot, that emotional baggage is important for us to understand. And there are so many knots in our lives, and we carry the pain from the past. You know, that's a knot that is so devastating, and oftentimes it shuts us down. It stifles our stability. It stifles our productivity. Hard to be productive when you just you don't even feel like getting out of bed. You don't even feel like thinking that you matter, but you do. You do matter. And that very simple knot, and I'll call that the emotional knot, and that is so important. And we're talking about today, if you just joined us here on It's About You radio show, WDRB Media, the voice of the community, we're talking about the second part of the series here, untying the knots, because the knots are real. And I just talked about the overhand knot. Now, the second knot, let's call this the square knot, or sometimes it's called the reef knot. The square knot, a basic knot used to tie two ends together securely. So you're putting two ends together securely. You see, that knot's got to be very secure, because when you start to pull on that knot, if they're not secured properly, they're going to come apart. And it's important, like if you're tying packages or, bandages, or two ropes of equal size, and you want to make the rope longer. It's kind of like if you have a water hose and you connect the hoses together. They're both 50 feet. And so now you want to connect them because it has the threads. Well, when it comes to a rope or a ribbon, it doesn't have the threads, but you got to make sure that it's secure. It's designed for tying packages or bandages. As I said, the two ropes of equal sizes. I want you to think about these terms: commitments, agreements, and partnerships. Yeah, they're used. A square knot is used for that. Why? Because when you talk about commitment, partnerships, a business, a relationship, two people, two separate individuals that are joining forces to become one and be stronger, or two people or two businesses be merged together, a merger. That means there's some agreement there. There's some partnership there. And that's called a square knot or a reef knot. Boy, let me tell you, when you start talking about putting people together, putting emotions together, putting your feelings together, a relationship together, listen, that relationship knot, that's a partnership. So some knots come from broken trust, unresolved conflict, or weak boundaries. You keep replaying the same argument, the same hurt, the same disappointment. Untying relationship knots takes honest conversation, healthy boundaries, and sometimes forgiveness, not because they deserve it. Ooh, not because they deserve it. Keep that in mind. This is not about you don't deserve it. No, but because you deserve peace. Not about the other person. You deserve peace. In other words, how can I put this very simply? You can't heal in silence what was wounded in a relationship. You can't heal in silence what was wounded in the relationship. So it is important that relationship knot. Let's just call this one a relationship knot. And oftentimes, as I said a moment ago, some knots come from broken trust, unresolved conflict, or weak boundaries. You keep replaying the same argument. There's a lot of times it's the same old song played on a different day. And sometimes because you're hurt, or had some disappointment, the relationship knots, takes honest conversation. And a lot of times people are avoiding the conversation. The conversation, are they committed? Are you committed? People go into business relationships and there's some animosity, and the business is doomed to fail because the conversation. And sometimes you got to have a tough conversation. And sometimes the conversation can be very uncomfortable. And my colleague that I work with at the college, educator, Dr. Johnson, she says all the time, we tell the students to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. Having that conversation, that tough conversation that you may have to have with people in that relationship knot. So that first knot, we talked about the overhand knot, which was part of the emotional knot. And now we're talking about this relationship knot. That is so powerful because that leads to a lot of issues, a lot of trauma that people may have. And the relationship knot is one that you deal with constantly because it could be family members tied into this, significant others, loved ones, husbands, wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever it may be, whatever the relationship is, that can lead to a lot of issues you may have, and we get caught up in whether the person deserves it. But sometimes if you focus on your peace of mind, because you deserve the peace, because if you have no peace, guess what? The relationship is not worth it. It is not worth it, and it's a knot in it. And I said last week, and I'll repeat this. Well, 2 weeks ago when I first aired this, when I was talking about that domestic violence and that relationship. If you are a person involved with, you are a victim of domestic violence, and guess what? It isn't about them. It is about your peace. But I love him. I love her. I want to stay, but I want to make it. And guess what? But you're being victimized. And if you have children who are witnessing that relationship knot is so important. And remember, we talk about the conflict and their weak boundaries. Every relationship has to have boundaries. That knot without boundaries is so important. I remember as a little boy, my mother told me to go get her purse. And she says, never go into a woman's purse. She called it pocketbook. Don't go in a woman's purse. And a woman has a right to change her mind. And don't question her. Though I was maybe 10 years old, 11 years old, she was sharing that with me. And I attribute this today about relationships. People going into the other person's cell phone, looking, snooping around, going around trying to, as if because sometimes if you start looking for something, you'll find it. And be careful what you're looking for. I'm not advocating secrets. I'm not talking about that. But there needs to be boundaries in a relationship. Certain things that you must respect and deal with unresolved conflict. And sometimes if there's broken trust, all of those things can create problems for you. So now, let me go to this next knot. So I've talked about the overhead knot, the square knot. Now let's talk about the granny knot. The granny knot looks like a square knot, but tied incorrectly and slips easily. If it's tied incorrectly, if you tie this one incorrectly, and it will slip easily. And that's a common mistake knot. I guess the way to do this is quick fixes that don't really hold. You see, a lot of times people want to make a quick fix to something, but it's not really going to hold because this granny knot is, number one, has been tied incorrectly. Now, I want you to, this kind of ties in with that relationship knot as well, because there are some relationships that are incorrect. There are some people who are unequally yoked. There are people who should not be together. I just found out that there's a young lady that's been out of the college for about 2 years. She's very young, just turned 21 years of age, and came to my office and was happy to be back in school, talking about things. I noticed a ring on her finger. I didn't say anything, and she said to me, "Oh, by the way, Instructor McDonald, I'm married now." And I'm thinking, okay, well, congratulations and this kind of stuff, and begin to talk about, and I asked her a couple questions about, her significant other. Oh, he's wonderful. He's this and that, and this. Okay, all right. Well, then I asked her, how'd you meet him? And she got to talking how he was her Uber driver. Okay. And she went on to tell us she was in the car with her friend, and she was having some issues with her ex, and everything was going on. And long story short, they started talking. Their birthdays were similar, same month, and the three of them in the car talking. And she noticed he was kind of cute, and she got his phone number. And they've been talking every day since then, and they got married. And I said, well, how long have you known him? She said 5 months. And my red flags went up. 5 months. And you've married the individual. And I had a flashback to my grandmother, who used to say things like, take time to know her. Let the seasons go by, boy. She would say that. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, this relationship right here can slip away easily because you don't really know the person. Do you really know the person that you've known for 5 months? I know I'm making a general statement, but at 21 years of age, and you met someone 5 months ago, I keep thinking about this granny knot. A common mistake. Hey, quick fixes that don't really hold. A quick decision for a big decision. And I keep thinking, ooh, that's a granny knot. Because going back into this type of relationship, and as she was talking to me about classes and everything, he called twice, wanting to know where she was and why she didn't answer the phone the first time. And I was thinking to myself, red flags. When he's talking about boundaries and relationships and those types of things, that emotional knot as well. And she can say all the good things, and she doesn't have to work now. She wants to go to school, focus on this. But from what I heard over the telephone, I heard that voice. And my years of domestic violence counseling made me, red flags went up in my mind immediately. And you probably know someone who may say, oh, they met. Now, there are people who met and they were married in a year, been married 25 years. I know it does happen. However, sometimes, often than not, because you don't know that person, you met their representative, that creates a problem. That creates a problem, and that can be a major problem. And that can lead to the next one I want to talk about. Along that side, I've talked about the emotional knot and the relationship knot. This goes to the trauma knot. The trauma knot. Some, of the trauma knots. Trauma knots are some of the tightest knots we carry. They are tied during moments of survival, abuse, loss, rejection, neglect. And this, if this is you, Hear me clearly. Healing is not a weakness. Healing is not a weakness. Untying trauma knots take time, support, and often professional help. You don't have to untie this one alone. See, that trauma knot, it goes deep. It goes deep. And I hope I am totally wrong about my student. I truly hope that I am totally wrong. But it's my experience that it is likely to run into some major issues or some major problems can come out of because there's so much relationship. And see, she was coming out of a bad relationship and moved into another one and got married. Oh my goodness. She dove into the water. She doesn't know whether it's 12 feet or 3 feet. And you dive in head first and you're not sure, that could lead to some major trauma and everything else that comes with that package. And I just truly know that this is one that this knot, number one, remember, strong people ask for help when the knot is too tight and can't be loosened by themselves. Strong people will ask for help. Remember that, because the trauma knot oftentimes cannot be dealt with alone. A lot of times you may say your higher power, absolutely. But also, as I always tell people, prayer life, time, and a good therapist, oh yeah, they can do a lot of help toward dealing with that trauma knot. And with that, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Did you know all disease begins in the gut? That's right. All disease begins right in your gut. You've got trillions of bacteria that influence your immune system, your energy, your emotional well-being. The good news is, whether you're 8 or 85 years old, you have a gut and you need P84 in your system. P84 is 84 fruits and vegetables organically grown all over the world designed to restore your gut. Probiotics, prebiotics, and postbiotics, all organically designed to help your gut thrive the way it's supposed to. Simply go to mauricemcdonald.net. mauricemcdonald.net, MauriceMcDonald.net, and learn more about the living well, eating smart, and feeling better with P84 in your system, all organically grown. Once again, go to mauricemcdonald.net and learn all about your gut microbiome. We're back. We're back here on the It's About You radio show, WDRB Media, the voice of the community. I'm your host, Maurice McDonald. Each and every Tuesday morning, I have the privilege and honor of being on this platform, sharing some amazing information. We just finished segment 1. We're talking about the series that I'm conducting, Untying the Knots in our lives, the knots in our thinking, the knots in our behavior, the knots that are holding us back from being the greatest that we can possibly be. And I just finished talking about the 3 knots so far up until now. We talked about the overhand knot that's simply tied. We began to talking about the granny knot. We just finished sharing some information about that. And then, of course, that second knot, we talked about the square knot and, the different benefits and problems created by some of these knots. And just before the break, I started talking about an emotional knot. The emotional knot, which can be devastating at times. And I said that, number one, you don't, what you don't express will end up carrying you, and making sure that was on that emotional knot. And then we talked about that the relationship knot. You can't heal in silence what you were wounded by in a relationship. What was wounded in your relationship, healing in silence, you can't do it. And people try that, and they're smiling, they look happy, and they're miserable. And that is so true. That is that relationship knot. And then, of course, we talked about the trauma knot. Strong people ask for help when the knot is too tight and they can't loosen it by themselves. I highly recommend all the time. I always talk about being able to to be a part of that, and to make sure that you're able to get some help when you need it. That is so true, so true. So I want to go on a little further here, and let's talk about another type of knot. And I think this one will kind of hit home for you. The bowline knot. You know, the bowline knot. You know, it creates a strong loop that won't slip. A strong loop that won't slip is called a bowline knot. And the idea of it is, you think about this. It's used in rescues or boating and climbing. You think about what happens when people are on zip lines, or they're on a boat and they're tying a knot to anchor something there, or you're throwing a rescue out. You're throwing a life ring out at someone, and that rope is tied on there. You don't want that rope to slip out. That's got to be a tight knot, because people in that water drowning, and they're reaching out for that lifeline, and they're grabbing it, wrapping it around their bodies or around their arms and shoulders. They may be too tired to swim anymore, and you're pulling them in. So that knot has got to be tight. You're rescuing, boating, or you're climbing. I want you to think about people who do rock climbing, and they are rappelling down. I know I've seen the firefighters when they're coming down the side of a building, going in trying to get something. They're using a rope to go into a burning building to get someone out, perhaps, and they're coming down, or to rescue. You'll see people you've seen people hanging from a helicopter by a rope where the person's going down, or they're lowering a rope to pull somebody up. That bowline knot has got to be important. And on this one, we're talking about healthy boundaries, strong, but not tightening. That's that part. See, you got to be careful in relationships. I keep going back to those healthy boundaries, but you want it to a point where it's not tightening or strangling someone, or preventing somebody from speaking. You know, I have to give this analogy. When I was doing the domestic violence counseling, I heard people say things like, "Oh, we've been married 25 years. We've never had an argument." First and foremost, lightning is going to strike. Secondly, I don't believe a word of that. Because if you've been married 25 years, 10 years, and you've never had an argument, that means one person in that relationship is not allowed to express feelings. One person in that relationship is not allowed to express their thoughts. Because if there two people are together, there's going to be some disagreement sometimes. And people love to make the analogy as well driving. I've been driving 25 years. I've never had an accident. My question is, how many have you caused and don't even know you caused it? So keep this in mind, that when you're talking about these boundaries and in relationships, that it is okay to express the feelings, and make sure when we're talking about that particular knot, it is important that we make sure that we also tie this to the habit knot. What habit do you have that's creating a problem? Some of us are tied up in habits we don't even like. Negative self-talk, procrastination, unhealthy coping, addictions. These knots are formed one small choice at a time, and they're untied the same way. Progress beats perfection, ladies and gentlemen. You got to have some progress with that. We're not talking about being perfect. What habit knot? What habit do you have that's holding you back? And the habit starts small, as I said. Some of us are tied to habits that we don't even like. I'm thinking about people that have the habit of cigarettes. You'll hear some people say, I want to quit. I need to quit. And by the way, if anybody says I need to quit, they're not going to quit. But I will quit. I'm going to quit. And here's how I'm going to do it. That's a different stance. I need to do this. I need to exercise. Listen, some of us are tied to habits we don't even like, and we got negative self-talk. I'll do it tomorrow. That's that procrastination. unhealthy coping, addictions, all of that plays a role. And guess what? It starts small. And keep this in mind. It starts small, but also small habits or small changes done daily, little things done daily bring great results. See, small changes loosen big knots. Small changes. For example, when I started working out with my personal trainer, getting up in the morning with that walk, becoming part of the 5:30 club, 5:30 a.m. club. Yeah, up early in the morning, walking, getting that walk in and listening to the, my headphones and, spending time with the creator, listening. And it's early in the morning. In the beginning, it was even the cold mornings. It was difficult to do. But when I got out there and once I get that first quarter mile in, I'm feeling pretty good. It becomes a habit. Now I feel bad when I don't do it. See, it started 12 months ago, that journey. You see, some of you got habits that you got to get rid of. Some of the habit is the negative self-talk that you got about yourself. And that's becoming a knot, and you're tying yourself up. And this is called the habit knot. Along with the different names, I'm taking the real knots and putting the other issues that go with that knot. We've been talking about the relationship knot. We talked about the trauma knot. Now this is the habit knot. And understand, to break a habit, it takes little things. It takes a little thing, the little small beginnings. It didn't look like much. It didn't feel like much. And you say, well, this can't bring change. But over a period of time, major changes happen, and you can begin to feel it because you now develop a new habit. You see, how do you replace? See, most people think, when I stop doing this, I'm going to be bored. No, you got to replace a behavior with a behavior. Replace a thought, a negative thought, with a positive thought to eliminate it, to move it out. A way of untying these knots that have kept us bound, that kept us confused, kept us struggling. And this is why this is going to be a series, because there's so much material that I want to get into and talk about this. And I'm going to eventually have a guest coming in with me. We're going to share this information because as I look back over my life over the years, the knots that kept me tied up, that habit knot, oh my goodness. How do you get overweight? Oh, one donut at a time. Okay. One Coca-Cola at a time. Having one every day. Having a little piece of candy every day. Having, drinking your calories. That sweet tea you got to have, or that whatever you just got to have at every meal. And over a period of time, those little pieces became big, and suddenly you're 50 pounds overweight, or you're 80 pounds overweight. And now you figure, oh, I want to get it off fast. I want to figure, well, you didn't put it on fast. Slow. And I got to get exercise. I don't want to exercise. I just want to come off. See, changing the mindset, bad habits. Sometimes a bad habit could be thinking negatively. Yeah, negative thoughts. It's a bad habit. Changing between your ears. What you tell yourself, what you believe, what you keep repeating about yourself. I know I'm too lazy to work out. And I had a student to tell me that. Just come out and tell me why he has struggled in school in the past is because he's lazy. He's 26 years old, and with an hour, 45-minute conversation, he said he was lazy 5 times. And I just asked him, what was his benefit? What was he getting out of saying he's lazy? Because you've repeated it 5 times. How many times do you say that? And now you're wondering why you're struggling. So a lot of times, there's a book called Hung by the Tongue, a little thin paperback book. And I highly recommend you get your hands on it. Hung by the tongue. Do I have a habit of negative speech? Have I made that a habit? Is that a knot that I can personally untie myself? Because I believe there are knots that I know I can untie, but I have not chosen to do it yet. Because how many know you can know what you need to do, but you don't complete it? You don't follow through. You don't do it. So changing that, and that becomes a habit as well. So that habit knot can really, really work havoc, should I say, on you, on your life. And it's so important to do that. As I've do a quick recap a little bit about it. What kind of knot in your life feels the tightest right now? Think about it. What knot feels the tightest right now in your life? Emotional, relational, habit, trauma? Which one feels that about you? And that is important for you to grab and figure out, well, you know what? I do have some knots in my life and I need to take charge of it. You see, I've talked about the overhead knot, the square knot, the granny knot, the bowline knot, which is, we said, strong, needs to be strong because it's used to rescue people. Boating and climbing. See, that's a knot, and that's got to be a powerful rope. And the key thing, since we're talking about ropes and strings and those kinds of things, what is the rope made of? What is your rope made of? What are you made of? Who are you listening to? Do you have strong character? Are you tough or are you tissue paper? Are you emotional at times and other times you're logical? And being emotional is okay. I'm not saying emotional is a bad thing. Emotions are part of your life. But are you allowing your emotions to make you weaker? Are you allowing your emotions to keep you in trauma? Are you allowing your emotions or your feelings and all those things to get in the way of you being a better person and making that decision? Because I said, I did say this 2 weeks ago on the show. I said nothing happens until you get mad. M-A-D, make a decision. When you make a decision, you see, that's strong. When you get mad, that's like that bowline knot that's used to rescue people. Because sometimes you are the person that needs to be rescued. Rescue yourself sometimes. Because some things you don't need the counseling for. You just you know what to do, but you choose not to do it. And I'm talking to myself. I knew I needed to work out. I knew I ought to work out. But I kept saying need. And guess what? The benefit of it is I'm smaller. The benefit of that, I'm less pain, no knee pains. I'm sleeping better. See, that's a benefit of it, of him making this right. Now, this next knot, the slip knot, or sometimes it's called the running knot, a loop that tightens when you pull it. You see, it's a loop that tightens when you pull it. And it's also can be adjustable loop or temporary holes. Okay? And I guess the metaphor I would use for that would be is problems that tighten the more you pull without strategy. You see, sometimes the problems in your life will tighten the more you pull when there's no strategy. You see, sometimes things go in our life. We need to have strategy. You got to have a strategy. You cannot go out here and hope, I wish something happened. I just want this just to, maybe you throw something against the wall to see if it sticks. See, you got to have identity to identify the knot, have a strategy. And many people are tied to labels. Are you tied to labels? I'm not enough. Oh, you have an identity crisis. You don't believe in yourself. I'm not enough. I'm just one who messes up all the time. Negative image, negative self-image of yourself. This is all I can ever do. I'll never be anybody successful. I can never go back to school. You've been often wanting to do things, but what you're telling yourself, your identity knot, that slip knot we're talking about, that identity that's the problem. That's an identity knot. Untying it means learning to see yourself beyond your past mistakes, beyond other people's expectations, and reconnecting with who you were created to be. I said earlier, you came into the world a winner. Stop listening to other people. Stop listening to your past mistakes. Stop. We all make mistakes. You fail. I don't care if you went to prison. There's a comeback. The idea for you now to say, I used to be in prison, but my mind is no longer in prison. There are people in prison getting their education. There are former inmates. There were former people who've been under substance abuse for years. They're celebrating 9 months or 9 years or 30 years in sobriety because they made a decision to do this, and now they don't view themselves. They know they are in recovery, but they don't see themselves the way they used to see themselves. They have a lot to offer. And they don't say, this is all I'll ever be. They're untying that knot means that you see yourself beyond your past mistakes. I keep repeating that because that identity knot can hold you back from great opportunity. As I said earlier, you may be faced with some amazing opportunity, but you're struggling with it because all you can see is past failures. All you can see is what neighborhood you came from. I'm from the other side of the tracks. I got this, and you don't know what I've been through. People in my neighborhood, my zip code, and my area code, nothing ever good came out of the projects. First and foremost, stop calling it the projects. You call it public housing. See, a project has a beginning date and an ending date. Let me say that one more time. A project has a beginning date and an ending date. See, there's a negative. They come from the trailer park. They come from the wrong side of the track. Number one, the tracks are needed. You came from the right side. You can't help where you grew up, what you came out. You can't help that part, but you can help what you say about yourself, what you allow people to speak about you. And it's important that you get your own identity. This is why I'm huge on affirmations. A good way to untie some knots is every single day you wake up, you look in the mirror, you got something taped on the mirror that says, I am a winner. I will go out today and be the best. I'm the head, not the tail. Above only, not beneath. Have your favorite quote or whatever a favorite scripture or whatever it may be that you're repeating it every day. Because what you hear coming from through your ears, coming through your lips, gets into your soul, into your spirit. And hopefully, as I said, what this show is about, getting into your legs, causing you to make moves. Because as I always tell people, you can't be broke and skeptical at the same time. Because one of them you have to have. You got to have a positive mindset to get that success out there. And there are people who are successful, but they're not successful for long because they don't believe it. And the first time there's a bump in the road, I knew I was going to mess it up. Because somebody else will tell you, who going to hire you? I've had students to say this. The knots they have in their life is their family members, reminding them of their past failures. And now you in college, who in the world going to hire you? And then they grab onto that. And then when they have failed their first exams, oh my goodness, here comes all the negative comments and the negative thinking. And some of them drop out 6 months to a year. They keep coming back 7 years trying to get a 2-year degree, 7 years trying to get a 4-year degree, because they keep stopping and starting because their identity, they're lost in their own identity. And that creates major, major problems. So it's important that you get these knots out and get these knots corrected and identify the knots. And I've been talking about them. And so now let's talk about the clove hitch. The clove hitch. It wraps around the pole or post, easy to tie and untie. You've seen that rope that's tied around the post. And it says that it's easy to tie and untie, pretty much securing the rope temporarily. That could be so it's going to be tied there temporarily because each day you're going to come back and untie it, or you have the ability to do that. It's a temporary attachment that wasn't meant to be permanent. Oh my goodness. There are people in your life. Here's a knot that you have. You're hanging on to people that are supposed to be temporary in your life, and you've made them permanent. You have made them permanent, and they were not supposed to be permanent. That is so important. And that is important for you to understand, to be able to identify who was supposed to be there. Who was supposed to be there. And the idea of saying that I'm going to make them permanent. Kind of like the student I was talking about earlier. She made somebody permanent in her life at age 21, and you have known them for 5 months. And you're already married. So which means you were married probably in 120 days and of knowing this person. And because you spend all that time and you're talking, it doesn't necessarily mean that I got to make them permanent. And oftentimes people have this fear of being alone, and you make people permanent in your life. You know, the story about a tree. Each year we always see in the fall of the year, leaves come off the tree. I used to say that the leaves fall off the tree. And through some research, I found out that's not true. What happens is the tree gets rid of the leaves because the tree needs the nutrients that the leaves have to make it through winter. You see, the roots need that energy, the substance that the leaves, and the fall leaf serves no purpose. So the tree gets rid of the leaves so the leaves don't just fall. So I just dropped some knowledge on you. How many of you are hanging on to people, things, situations, mindsets that don't serve you well, and they're draining your energy? You're hanging around people that are draining your soul. They're draining your existence all the time, and you won't let them go. Because you've heard this saying before, I'm quite sure. People come into your life for a season or a reason. There's some people that are just associates. They're just acquaintances. They're co-workers. They're colleagues. And they're not meant to be friends for life. Everybody that you say is a friend is not your friend. And that part is so important for you to understand and know that you must be ready. You must be ready to let go of things and people that don't serve you well. It's like wearing clothes that are too big. You've lost that 50 pounds, and that dress or that shirt, that blouse or that pair of pants you wore when you were wearing 50 pounds, you'll notice a difference. And now they don't fit anymore. Well, I'll just put a belt on them. Okay, you can put the belt, but they're going to look totally uncomfortable to you. They're going to be so loose on you. And it's time to let them go and get ones that are appropriate. Well, the same thing happens when it comes to people. Also, the mindset that you have, that part is so important for you to know that knot has got to go. I've got to release it. Now, with releasing it, guess what? There's going to be fear. Yes, there's going to be some anxiety. There's going to be some apprehension because I've been comfortable. I've been very comfortable with this knot. This knot is so good. Oh, I need this knot. And, I've always been here and this person's been around and they're backstabbing you, backbiting you, doing everything behind you, sabotaging, but you won't let it go because for fear of being alone. Ooh, that's another whole topic right there. That's another whole topic. I'm afraid of being alone. And that knot gets in the way and causes so many issues for you. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Did you know all disease begins in the gut? It's true. Your gut is the foundation of your entire health. When it's balanced, your body thrives. But when it's out of balance, everything from fatigue, weight gain, mood swing, and chronic illness begins. Your gut isn't just about digestion. It's home to trillions of bacteria that affects your immune system, your energy, and your emotions. The good news is there's P84. 84 fruits and vegetables organically grown all over the world into an amazing product designed to help you to feel better, designed to help you thrive and win. Simply go to mauricemcdonald.net. That's MauricemcDonald.net to learn all about P84 and get it in your system today. That's mauricemcdonald.net and learn all about your gut microbiome. We're back. We're back, guys, here on WDRB Media, the voice of the community, on that It's About You show. Time has gone by so quickly. Each and every week, this 1 hour goes by so fast. And I hope you're being blessed by this amazing information I'm sharing with you about untying the knots. I told you earlier, I saw this on a billboard. And each time I go by and see that, it just kept resonating with me about the knots that are in our lives. And I just want you to know, close for today. Before I close, I want to talk a little bit about what you remember from today. You didn't tie every knot in your life, but you can take responsibility for untying them. Healing is a process. Growth is a journey. And every small step that you take toward healing loosens the knot a little bit more. Doing that is so important. Don't rush the process. Don't walk the journey alone. And don't quit on yourself just because the knot is tight. Keep pulling gently. Freedom is on the other side of that. See, freedom's on the other side of that knot, ladies and gentlemen. Pulling it gently sometimes. Getting help if you must. It is important. I want you to think about this. Got a couple questions I want you to ponder on for next week, because we're going to continue this. What knot in your life feels the tightest right now? Is it the emotional knot, the relational, the habit, the trauma, or the, identity knot? You figure out which knot is there for you. The emotional, relational, habit, trauma. What knot is that you feel that's the tightest right now? That's for you to examine. And this is why therapy is so important, to help you process this in a safe, non-judgmental environment. Even getting with your pastor, your priest, whomever that your faith is, who you worship with, or get into a licensed professional counselor. Go to Psychology Today. You'll find many of them there. Licensed clinical social worker. You get to see all of them who specialize in these kind of things, helping you to untie the knots. Second question I have for you: what's one of the small steps you can take this week to begin loosening that knot? What small step can you take this week without excuses, without any of that, to help you to begin to loosen that knot? A small step. Number one, it could be admit you have it, because you can't change what you don't admit. You have to admit that. So you find out what small step, this is not big steps, the small step you can do. And thirdly, who can support you as you work on untying it? Who can you reach out to? That best friend who's really got your best interest at heart. As I said, that counselor, that pastor, that priest, that person that can be there to help you and will be honest with you, not someone that's going to blow smoke up you, someone that's going to just, tell you something, tickle your ears, or tell you, oh, don't worry about it, man, girl, or girl, you okay, ain't nothing wrong with you. No, that you cannot do. And if you're listening right now and you feel tangled up and you are and you're not broken, remember, you're human. Healing begins with the awareness. Today, name the knot. This week, take one step toward loosening that knot. If it's the part about the health part, start walking. Go out, start walking half a mile. Just walk and come back. Work out, the diet, whatever it is that you got to do to help you figure out what the knot is. And then you do that. reach out to me. You can listen to me. Go to my YouTube channel. It's About You radio show on YouTube. You get a chance to hear, and you can reach out to me also on mauricemcdonald.net. Go there. My email situation is all right there. Instagram, you can follow me there. Maurice McDonald 51. I'm right there. So reach out to send me an email to let me know what you're getting from this series, talking about untying the knots that are in our lives that could help hold us down. Hey, listen, we're going to go right now, but we're going to be back next week because this is the It's About You radio show. And we're going to be here next Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, because we're going to be in the building.